Okay, so I just want to take a chance to introduce myself. I am Jacqueline Tucker, and I've been with Stratum Consulting Partners for almost 5 years. And we are, Michael and I, and then some of our other team members at Stratum, are working on starting a monthly video series. So what we're going to do is we thought you guys would be a great, we're using you as our guinea pigs. And so we wanted to kind of test out what we had put together. And we're going to record this session. If you don't know, we are recording everything right now. And we're going to republish this, through our blog and through our YouTube channel that we're just getting started. So what we will do is at the end of our demo that we're going through, we're going to give away a little piece of code. And so it'll take us a couple days to get our video published and, kind of fine tune everything. And so if in the meantime, before we get the video published, you would like that code, shoot us an email. I'll drop the email in our chat section, and we can go ahead and get you that code just as soon as possible. But back to a little bit about me. I live about an hour and a half north of Atlanta. So I live outside of the major congestion, but if I ever have to go downtown, it takes forever, an hour and a half with no traffic. And then, let's see. So before I started working at Stratum, I was actually in the public sector. I worked for a couple local counties, and then I worked for state DOT. And my background is in GIS. So that's what I was mainly focused on. So at Stratum, kind of my specialty is the GIS and EAM integration piece. And then kind of what's followed suit with that is our mobile. Have been what I focused on while I've been with Stratum. So outside of work, I have a 14-month-old daughter. It's hard to believe that she is that old. And she keeps me busy and keeps life fun here. And then I have horses that I ride. And as a family, we love to go camping and hiking and spending time on the water and really just, getting outside and doing anything we can outside. So that's a little bit about me. We want to help, kind of connect everybody. So next, this is Michael Snyder. I think most of you, in this call probably are aware of Michael, have talked to him or met him, but I'm going to let him introduce himself and give just a little bit of background about when he started at Stratum and kind of his past work history. Maybe you guys don't know that yet.
Sure. Thanks, Jacqueline. I live in Durwood, Maryland, which is about 5 miles north of Washington, D.C. Well, actually, it's 14 miles north of Washington, D.C., but 5 miles outside the Beltway. I live right next to Rock Creek Park, where I hike with my dogs on a daily basis. My wife and I foster beagles through Beagle Rescue Education and Welfare, which is BREW. And we've been doing that for about 8 years now. We have close to 140 dogs who've come through our house. And we just finished placing 7 puppies that we got from a heartworm positive, very pregnant stray who came into the system. So those 7 dogs actually been placed, except for one. His name is Minchip, and I got him right here. So everybody would like to see my little beagle. So this is Minchip. Say hi, everybody. Okay. Good boy. Good prop. So he's a lot of fun. It's a nice break from having older dogs, which we tend to end up keeping a few of those because they are unable to be placed. Just lost one recently, and it's pretty sad. I'm also a lifelong scouter. I've been a scoutmaster for over 25 years because I enjoy hiking, camping, and Dutch oven cooking. I talked to some of my scouts the other day, and we figured out that I've been probably camping for about 1,000 nights and days and nights, which means I've slept 2.5 years in a tent.
That's awesome.
Which is awesome. So prior to Stratum, I worked for the local parks department, where I implemented and managed the Infor EAM product. And that was based on my past experience working with the Coast Guard, the Army, and with the trucking industry. And then while I was with the Parks Department, I served on the EAM board. I continue to serve on the EAM User Advisory Board, and I was the chair in 2016 and 2017. So I have a fair amount of experience with the EAM product from Infor.
Awesome. Is that it, Michael? Anything else?
That's a short version.
Well, I hope as we do these videos, you guys, get to know us on a little bit deeper level, learn things like Michael always has new puppies and beagles around, and maybe one day I'll bring my daughter in, but right now she's at the phase where if I had to take her away, she would just scream. So we're not going to do that. But before we get started with the EF demo, I kind of want to outline how our video is going to go. So we're going to start off and we're going to have a general overview, what EF is or what Extensible Framework is, how we can use it, maybe some tips and tricks. And then probably the last half of the meeting, we will actually go into a demo, look at how the extensibility framework works in some of our demos, and then work through the code. So that's the outline of how we're gonna be walking through this. And now we'd really just like to get started with the basics. So Michael, what is the Extensible Framework in EAM?
So Extensible Framework, or EF, is a code that you can insert into any screen in EAM, and it allows you to be able to customize the front end and be able to make changes that you can't normally make through Flex and things like that. So you actually can enhance the user experience that your customers or the users are experiencing when they interact with EAM in a browser environment.
So just kind of talking through this, how can EF or Extensible Framework be used? What's some high-level examples maybe?
So you can change the size of a field. You can change fields from being protected to optional and optional to protected based on other values that are on the screen. You can pre-populate some values, set up some default values based on other pieces of information that are already on the screen, as opposed to what the standard functionality is. You can change the operation of the screen. You can put double clicks on. You can allow turn on hyperlinks, turn them off, and then you can get data out of the database from other parts of the application and use that information to do calculations or whatever else you need to be able to do. You can do pop-up windows. You can do almost anything that you can think of.
So that all sounds really, really cool. So I'm not a developer. So what language do you use to write EF, and how proficient do you have to be? Do you have to be a master coder to make this work, or is it something that anybody can use and learn with?
So Extensible Framework is written in JavaScript. JavaScript is a background language that's used to control how the form actually works.
Okay.
So to be able to write some JavaScript, first thing you need to do is know some HTML, because the way the screen presents is in HTML, and what JavaScript does is it modifies that HTML or the style sheets that run behind the scenes to be able to make the screen look and act the way it does. So, and then as far as learning some JavaScript, the way I learned it is just go on the internet and search for a specific function that I want to be able to accomplish, try it out, see what it does, make sure that it works correctly, and then implement it into my development environment. And when it works fine, then I move it into a production environment.
Cool. Okay.
Sounds easy.
So where can we use EF or Extensible Framework, and how is it different than Flex? I know they can, maybe kind of do similar things, but can you elaborate on that just a little bit?
So Extensible Framework fires on the front end. So as you move around, navigate around the screen, the EF actually can fire. So when you go into a field or you leave a field, or when you query a record or you do a pop-up, then the Extensible Framework fires. With Flex, it doesn't fire until you actually hit the save button and it hits the database. So Flex is running in the database, EF is running in the front end. So you're able to replicate some capability that you have in your Flex and enforce it in the front end so that the user can experience an issue. So if there's a, you want to do some validations and things like that, you can validate it just when they tab out of the field rather than waiting until they save all the different fields that they've changed in the database when Flex fires.
Oh, cool. That's really neat. So that sounds really great, but it's mostly just I mean, it is only working in the front end of the application. So is this working in mobile? Is it something that we can do with the EAM mobile applications?
So no, this doesn't work in the mobile environment. Mobile has its own Flex that it runs. And the Flex that runs in mobile actually runs as you navigate through the various screens. So you can get a similar type of experience with mobile, but it's not quite as rich as what you see with the browser. So you do have some capability with it, but that's not in the they don't actually use the Extensible Framework. However, I understand that Infor is coming up with a HTML5 version of the mobile application, and I'm hoping that they'll make Extensible Framework available to that version of the mobile.
That would be awesome. That would be huge. Okay, so it's good to know some of those limitations. So maybe, you know, to help this conversation a little bit, let's look at a couple of examples and kind of talk through what it actually looks like when we're in the application.
Okay, so there's a little demo that I put together which shows off some capability for Extensible Framework, and it tells us, you know, what is possible. So first thing that we see is that I can actually highlight the different screens. So I can make them pink, and I'm using pink or salmon as my highlighting thing, so you can see where I'm going for this. The other thing you can see is up here. I've actually put a comment here, and I've used this for a number of customers when I want to notify them of something that's happening, rather than giving them a pop-up warning or something. I just put it up here in this white space. It means that the customer has less need to do clicks to close a window and things like that. So the other thing some of the things that I do with Extensible Framework is I write these functions, and these functions do various things. So this one's called the get value function, and what it does is it gets the description. So I've got the description, and I'm showing it right over here. Okay, and I've also got a function called highlight, which highlights the description. That's what's changing it to pink. I can set values. So this guy over here, slide is a UDF number 30, and I've set the value to 4. So set value, great function. I can also get the value of a checkbox. So if you see safety here is not checked, it comes back as a minus. Very similar to how things work when you're in Flex. If I check it, and actually I have the screen doing the work, I'm going to see that it's now a plus. So I can actually set the value of safety to plus, and then it becomes checked. I can uncheck it again. I can change the size of a field. So here I changed this description field to 600 pixels, and you see it extends over to the organization. If I was in a smaller formatted field, it wouldn't run over that, but it doesn't affect any of the other fields on the screen. So that's what happens. The other thing I can do is I can add a new prompt. So description doesn't normally have a prompt. I have a customer that wants the description to have a different name than the key field. So I can actually put that field back in there so that they can have a prompt that's appropriate. I can look at a drop-down list. So this is breakdown, and I can see that the value is BR breakdown or KD. If I change it to capital projects, I can see that the value is PROJ. So I can actually read not just the description that's on the field, but also get the type. I can focus to a specific field. So all of a sudden I jumped over here to the sign. So I can change the actual tab order on the screen based on what people put into the screen or where I want somebody to be able to go.
So that's a great example
And
of, if we want somebody to put in one piece of information and then automatically jump to another piece and populate that next, this is how we
that's great.
make
Yes,
it useful.
exactly. Yeah. And
Perfect.
then I can actually cause it to click. So when I actually go to that field, I can actually pull up the list of values. So
Ooh, that
if I were to
saves one
compare
click.
it,
That's awesome.
yeah. I can also, some of these fields, some of these code fields, as you can see, only have a code. So I can actually pull in, and I'm going to make this a little smaller so you can see that. I can pull in
There we go.
Eric's name, so I know Ife means Eric. I can also pull in out the email if I want. So if I want to change that to an email, this is actually not clickable. So if I click on this, it's going to open my email, and I can actually send an email off to myself or to Eric. And you don't see it because it popped up in a different window. So I can do some interesting things like that. I can turn hyperlinks on and off. So we had a customer that if there is no value here, they want the hyperlink to go away, so they don't actually navigate to that hyperlink.
That makes sense.
So if I remove Eric and go back up here, the hyperlink goes away. If I put it back, it shows up again.
Cool.
And then I'm going to skip ahead. I have some demos that I have over in the employee screen, but I'm going to pass on those and just show you some more things that we have on this work order screen. So EPAC, which is here, and the copy record, I've had instances where we want to hide those, so I can just make them go away. I can make the delete go away. I can make the copy. I can turn the help off, things like that. So you can add that to every single screen if you don't want some of those icons to appear so that they don't bother people. You can get them out of the way. I can make some fields actually disappear. So we have the problem code, failure code, cause code, action code. My current status is released, so I don't need those fields. So I can hide them. So now they only pop up when I'm in a closed status. I can make fields dependent on other fields. So I can say, if the department is electric, then I want class, tab out of this, to be mandatory. So now class is mandatory. And I can fill that in with a value. Oops.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. What happened here? Oh, yes, okay. I can say that okay, I see what happened. I'm in a smaller screen set, so I don't see the custom fields. So class controls your custom fields. So I just made, when this is electric, I said I want to have this lockout tag on or off value to be mandatory. So you can't normally make a custom field mandatory unless it's part of the store group. With Extensibility Framework, I can make that mandatory. And then I can, I now have my values. I can make this on, or I could have typed it. And now it requires that the lockout date time tag also be mandatory. So if it's on, this is mandatory. So I can put relationships between custom fields as well. All right. Let's see what else we got.
So Michael, let's talk about the
yeah, let's, okay, so we got that one. Okay, so now tabs. This is the coolest one that we've done recently. So I can actually change the tabs. So I don't know if you saw before, but activity had a 1 there. I've actually have a function that says color tab. I can say I want to color the activities tab. I want to put a 5 there. I want to make it red, and I want to make the background cayenne. So I can actually do that through Extensible Framework. And I can actually read from the database how many activities are there and whether it's booked, whether it's what the value is. So now I can also tab over to the book labor tab, And if I put some book labor in here, we'd see that the book labor, and I'm just going to go to this previous record up here, and we'll see that there's book labor and activities.
Perfect.
If I go to one before that, we'll see that I actually have 2 activities, but no book labor.
I know this is a huge one that is asked about a lot of time for documents, right? You know, there might be 3 or 4 documents on a work order or on a piece of equipment, and you know, it gets missed sometimes, right? People don't always navigate there and look at it because it might be at the end of the list, or they don't see it, or you know, they just they aren't looking there every time. But this really kind of gives that highlight notification that, hey, there's something here that needs to be looked at and evaluated.
Exactly. And that's how it actually came to be, as we actually had a customer that requested they want to see the number of comments and the number of documents that were on a specific work order.
That's awesome.
And,
yeah. Extensible Framework can do some really awesome things. So Michael, when you're working with this, what can't it do?
What can't it do? Well, so far, you know, only a couple of things have stumped me so far, but I'm eventually going to figure them out because, you know, the whole screen is already written in JavaScript. Right. So anything that the screen can do, you can probably modify yourself if you can just figure out where the code is and how it needs to be modified.
So, Michael, that's really neat. What are some gotchas that you found? You've been working with this for a long time, and of course, we all want to learn from you. What's been something we should watch out for while we're working through?
So you think that JavaScript is the same in any browser that you happen to use, but it's not true. There are some extensions that are available in one browser that may not be available to another browser. So it's very important to try out the Extensible Framework in all the browsers that your organization is going to be able to use. So we tend to go through and test all of our extensibility framework in Chrome is where we start because that's the browser of choice for Infor. Then we test it in Firefox, we test it in IE, we test it in Edge, and we test it in Safari, so that we can make sure that it works properly. And there's some things that are slightly different between each one of them. The only one that's given me a challenge is Firefox. Firefox does not allow you to change some things on the screen. It's just forbidden. Like changing the size of a field is something that just will not work in Firefox. It'll only work in the other browsers.
Okay. So any other tips or tricks? I know we've kind of walked through the demo. We're going to dive into the code a little bit more, and I can see a lot of people asking some really great questions. We're going to review those at the end, and if we don't have time to get through everything, we will we'll come back and answer those either through email or something else.
So the biggest tip that I'm going to show a little bit later is using the developer mode. Yeah, using the thing that you want to be able to do is use the developer mode in Chrome to be able to debug your code. Because what happens is when you put the extensibility framework into your Infor EAM form, it does not validate it, it doesn't check it. If there's anything wrong with the code, it just doesn't run it at all. So it's trying to protect your environment.
Right.
So even if there's syntax, if there's syntax, it's not going to tell you that there's a syntax problem. So you really got to test it in another environment before you deploy it. And Chrome is that ideal environment for testing the code.
Perfect. So Michael, thank you so much for walking us through some of those examples. I think it's really amazing what EF can do and how we can direct the user to, you know, populate certain pieces of information or require certain pieces of information. Talk about, you know, data integrity and data improvement. We can definitely get that through this. So that's huge. So now, you know, we've kind of walked through a couple of examples. We've seen a lot. I know a lot of people are interested in this. Let's kind of dive into how we do this. How do we set this up in our environment? How do we build the code? What does it look like? All those great things.
Sure. So I'm going to take you to another environment, which is our development environment, so you can see how we can work with the extensible framework. So Extensible Framework. So if you go to the admin and you go to screen configurations, you're going to find Extensible Framework. So if I go here to Extensible Framework, I'm going to see that I have what screens have actually been set up in my environment. Of course, it's running a little bit slow today. That's because we're doing a demo. Those things always happen. Right. So these are my demo screens. So I have one that's on the employee form, which is WSEMPS, and I've got two on WS Jobs. So if we look here at WS Jobs, see there's no screen here. If I go to the tab color, this one is enabled. So you actually have to put the screen name and activate it for it to be active. You can only have one Extensible Framework set of code per screen, and you can only have make only one active per screen.
Okay, so is there a text limit like we see in Flex or some other functionalities in EAM in this screen?
So I think it's stored in a long field. So I don't think that there's a limit. At least I haven't run into the limit, and I've written some pretty long code. So I think that it's a lot better than the Flex environment.
That's great. That's good to hear.
Right. So we're going to walk through what this code looks like so that people can understand it. I'm going to put that into a notepad.
Okay.
So over here, we've got our Extensible Framework, and this is actually the code that we're going to share with all the people who've participated if they ask for a copy of it so that they can do it. I've given out a template probably about 2 years ago, and then I've made some advances in how things work. So you're going to all get a copy of this work order code for you to be able to use. At the top, I usually put a comment so I know which customer I'm preparing this for and things like that. And then one of your friends is this console log, because what console log does is it sends a message to the browser in your developer window so you can see what's happening. So if you were to open your developer window, you could see what was happening. So I'm going to just take us over there real quick. So if I go to work orders, and I hit Control-Shift-J, which is also accessible by going here to More Tools and to Developer Tools.
Okay.
We're going to get the Control-Shift-J. So if I do Control-Shift-J, it opens a window, and you can control where this window is docked. And I like to dock mine on the bottom. But you can see here, I've got these messages. So it's actually telling me that I'm running Extensible Framework, work order screen number version 2.3. It did a git tab. It checked all these tabs, and it showed when I focused on the work order number and when I left the work order number. So it's actually showing me a number of different things that are going on. So if I go back here.
Real quick,
yes.
Does each browser have their own set of developer tools, and is one superior to the other? I know we like Chrome because that's in For's preference, but is there a different browser that you like, or is Chrome pretty much king?
So all the tools have the ability to look at the screen and what's happening. Okay. Like you said, Chrome is probably the easiest one to work with. Firefox is probably next easiest. I find IE to be a little bit difficult to work with. So I would encourage people to work in Chrome as their choice. But you can see here where I said console log, it actually printed that exactly what I wrote here. Okay. I usually set up my global variables and any background processes that I want to run. So this set timeout here is actually running this set tab every 2,000 milliseconds, which I guess is every 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, it's checking to see So this is firing in 2 seconds after the screen starts up, and that's what's actually putting this activities, the little prompt here that shows me there's one activity at the top of this onto the screen. So this is running as a background process rather than depending on other sorts of things. And then I like to use the timeout, which means just run it once, and then in the function itself, I'm going to call itself again, and you'll see that a little bit later.
Okay.
So we've got a bunch of functions, and I've developed probably 130 or more functions that are available for EF that we use within Stratum. And some of the basic ones I've given to you as part of this code. So get key, this gets this work order number up here. And that get key will work on any screen. So it'll actually get the current context of that guy. Cur tab gets the current tab of the that you're on. So we're currently on the record view tab, and the record view tab is known as header HDR. So if I were to run get tab, and I'm going to show you real quickly how we do that. So if I take this piece of code and I'm going to just turn off this background process, and if I go here into my console, and if I click this guy here, this little icon, and I click on a field, now I'm in the context of this form. I go back to my console log, and I can paste my extensibility framework code. And if I hit return, and if I don't get any errors, I know that the syntax is good. I got get tab, I've got cur tab, which gets me the current tab that I'm on. Cur app will tell me which application I'm running, so that way I know I'm in WS jobs, which is the work order. My get value I talked about before, set value, get checkbox value, field status, which lets me set the status of a field as being either optional, protected, hidden, those sorts of things. Is empty is a good one because it tells me if there's data that's available in that particular variable. Because sometimes it's undefined, sometimes it's null, sometimes it's blank. There's lots of things that you may find. It could be a blank NBSP semicolon, which is HTML for a non-breaking space.
Oh, okay.
Okay, and then here's my get tab, which is the one that we want to use to be able to find out what the tabs are in the screen and give me the identifier for that tab, because everything in EF, we actually have to talk to the elements, the HTML elements, by its identifier. So this will just get me a tab identifier.
Okay.
And then this is a function that goes and gets the count for how many activities are out there. I have one that does the same thing for Boo, which is my booked labor. And I can use those two in my custom fields, like set tab. I can go and say, okay, get my number of activities and put that into VAct, get my number of booked labor, put that in VBoo, and then I can say if VAct is greater than 0, which means I have data behind it, I'm going to change this to black, and I'm going to put a superscript that's the number of VAct. If it's not 0, I'm not going to make it black. I'm just going to leave it as the basic color that it came up as, because the tabs are not really black. They're kind of a gray color.
Okay.
Okay. And then I also have my color tab, which I called from here, which actually I pass it the tab I want to implement against, the number of records behind the scene, the color, and the background. And this is my code for being able to create the subscript. So the subscript, actually putting brackets around the subscript, which we have right here. And then what happens is the tab actually ends up moving up because it's centered.
Right.
So I actually have to adjust the top margin down 4 pixels and right pad it 3 pixels to accommodate the addition of that subscript.
So Michael, would that have an issue if we went into the double digits? Would that need to be modified, or is it still going to just center it with the count that you have there?
So I played with up to 2 digits
Okay.
to make sure that it was centered properly for a 2-digit result. They came back with more than 2, and it's actually going to possibly run over into the next field. If you remember in my demo, the pink on the screen covered up the next field. Well, the same thing happens here. Text will copy over top of other pieces of code.
Okay.
Okay. And then, yeah, the last section is this repeat set tab. This repeat set tab is what's running in the background. And what happens is it calls set tab, which is the one that I wrote up here, which checks the 2 tabs that I want to populate and colors each one of them. And then what happens is after that, it calls itself and with a 2000 millisecond timer. So 2000 seconds or 2 seconds later, it's going to run. And then it's going to run again in 2 seconds and run again in 2 seconds. So when you run these things in the background, you need to make sure that they're not slowing down your environment. So you can adjust that appropriately. So if you don't care that it happens right away, you can adjust it to 5 seconds or something like that.
Is there a point where you start to see it affect the environment? If it's running every, quarter of a second or something like that. Have recommendations, 2000.
Yeah, I haven't seen problems, but I have seen places where I've written some code that kind of runs forever.
Okay.
So you get into an endless loop.
Right.
And then the whole thing kind of shuts down. That's why you want to test it out in your development environment before you put it into production. And that's why you actually want to test it in the control panel to make sure that it's working properly.
Okay, great.
And then now I've got this back up and running. Let's go back to my work orders. And I just wanted to show you a little bit of debugging. Control-Shift-D, Control-Shift-J will open up my debugger, and I'm going to just click on this guy and go over here and just click on any field. So if I want to know what a field looks like, when I click on the field, it'll show me the HTML about that field. So this location here, if we look very closely, you'll be able to see that the name of the field is it's going to say name equals, and it's probably going to be named location. People are putting in service tickets. So if I go back here to the work order number, you're going to see here that the name of this field is work order num, work order WORKORDERNUM. So that's how you actually reference it by name. Okay. And if I go here to the console, this is where I see my thing. So if I want to be able to test out a piece of code, and I'm just going to copy one of these basic ones. So this get cur tab. So I'm going to take my function, get cur tab. I paste that in there. Now I can do CURTAB, open paren, close paren, and it tells me I'm in header.
So Michael, anything else you want to add in real quick? We're kind of getting to the top of our time here. I've got a couple things I want to go over, and then we want to walk through some of the questions that have come up.
Yeah, yeah. You asked before, what can't you do? So, the only thing that I haven't been able to figure out, which someday I'm going to get, is like here when you see the statuses. What I want to be able to do is dynamically remove one of the values from the statuses. So that's something that I haven't been able to do yet, but when I figure it out, I'm gonna jump for joy.
Yes.
So that's the only one that's kind of niggling at me.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, well, so guys, I think this has been great. Michael has done an awesome job of learning how to use EF in EAM and really making, the page dynamic and figure out what information the user needs to be presented with first, or what do we want to highlight on the screen, all sorts of things like that. So thank you, Michael, for teaching us about
You're
ES
quite welcome.
and EAM and helping uncover some of this. Thank our viewers. I know most of you've been able to stick around through the whole video, which has been awesome. We hope you find this helpful. We really want to hear what you think. Was the format good? Did you learn a lot? Maybe were we too fast or too slow? What would help you? And we can kind of tailor what we're producing to help you guys. So a couple questions that have already come up that I have answers for is we will be publishing this video on our YouTube channel. We'll also publish it through a blog post that we have on our website. And once we get those up, we will send the links out to everybody here. We will also send out the link to download to request the code that we've kind of talked through today. So the email is going to be support@stratumcp.com. That'll create a ticket in our system, and then we will send you the code later today or in the morning. So again, I hope this was helpful. I hope it took a little bit of the mystery out of extensibility, and we will be working on releasing these videos once a month, or if not more often, just depending on how things are going in-house. I think that's all I have. So I know I've talked a lot. Again, the email address, if you need to contact us, is support@stratumcp.com. Again, thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you next time. Thanks, Michael.
No, you're quite welcome. Have a great day.
Everybody have a great day. Thanks again. Bye.